to me very carefully, because what you witnessed in the absolute unmitigated slaughter of the New Zealand national team by the United States was absolutely not a standard international basketball game. It was a highly coordinated, ruthlessly efficient, and incredibly brutal corporate liquidation occurring on a live global broadcast. We are talking about a final score of 101-46, and I need you to let that mathematical reality sink into your cognitive processing for a moment. A 55-point margin of victory is absolutely not a normal sporting result in any league or any country on this planet. It is a terrifying geopolitical statement broadcast directly to the rest of the international community, and more specifically to the internal, highly political hierarchy of women's professional basketball. The mainstream sports media, with their heavily sanitized, sponsor-friendly narratives, will politely call this a dominant performance or a great team effort. But the real operators, the individuals who deeply understand the dark, brutal, uncompromising mechanics of leverage, global market share, and institutional power dynamics, recognize this event for exactly what it truly is: a hostile takeover of the highest conceivable order. This was not a competition between two teams of athletes, but rather it was an execution of market dominance on a scale we have never seen before in this sport. For months, the firmly established gatekeepers of Team USA and the broader WNBA ecosystem have been playing a dangerous, highly political, and ultimately feudal game of delay and suppression. They have been desperately trying to protect the legacy hierarchy and the old guard from the undeniable, overwhelming, and utterly destructive gravitational pull of the new generation. They have utilized every institutional trick in the book to keep the brightest star in the universe operating in a restricted and heavily monitored capacity. But the dam has finally catastrophically broken, and the establishment could no longer justify their blatant institutional malpractice. They were finally and inevitably forced to hand the absolute keys to the global franchise over to the single, most valuable athletic and commercial asset on the face of the earth. It is about time that the greatest of all time gets the recognition she deserves, because seeing Caitlyn Clark in the starting lineup was a moment many have been praying for. Stephanie White. I know your skin was crawling when you saw her in the starting lineup, because you have been seen talking to the coaches on the side while trying to maintain your own knowledgeable image. I know you did not like that, but the exact millisecond Caitlyn Clark's name was officially written onto the starting lineup card, the entire economic, psychological, and tactical reality of international basketball shifted permanently and irreversibly. Do you possess the capacity to understand the sheer terrifying magnitude of what happens when you take a generational disruptor and surround her with the most lethal collection of high-efficiency athletic assassins on the planet? You get a mathematically impossible 101-point offensive operation that feels like a ruthless, cold-blooded CEO aggressively taking over a stagnant, failing Fortune 500 company. She played 23 highly optimized minutes, completely and utterly dictating the spatial geometry of the entire court. She delivered 14 highly efficient points and distributed 6 absolutely lethal pinpoint assists that completely dismantled the structural integrity of the opposing defense. But the raw, basic box score data does not even begin to tell the true, terrifying story of the leverage she wielded during those 23 minutes. She did not just score points, she systematically and intentionally broke the psychological will of the entire New Zealand defensive unit. She bent their entire defensive scheme and their entire scouting report to her overwhelming gravitational pull, creating massive, unexploited, highly lucrative pockets of space for her teammates. And let us talk about the terrifying corporate merger that took place in the United States backcourt between Caitlyn Clark and Paige Bueckers. The on-court synergy between these two is not just good entertaining basketball, it is a monopolistic enterprise specifically designed to bankrupt the rest of the world. Paige Bueckers logged a team-high 24 minutes of absolute operational brilliance, seamlessly blending her elite supercomputer processing speed with Clark's kinetic vision. When you put those two brilliant hyper-processing basketball minds on the exact same floor at the exact same time, it is no longer a fair, balanced athletic competition. It is a completely rigged market where they are actively feeding families and generating massive, unprecedented return on investment for the national program. They make the incredibly complex game of basketball look absurdly and horrifyingly easy for everyone else involved. Bueckers finishing with 7 points, 3 rebounds, and 3 assists are merely the administrative footnotes of a performance where she acted as the chief operating officer to Clark's chief executive officer. She ensured that every single offensive transaction was executed with zero wasted kinetic energy, while Clark focused on the high-level strategy. But the absolute, undeniable brilliance of this specific 55-point massacre lies in the harsh, glaring, uncomfortable contrast between the unstoppable high-speed future and the rapidly decaying, inefficient past. I am not even going to lie to you that second group went off and showed exactly what the future looks like. Chelsea Gray is still starting, and I honestly do not know why, because it is clear she does not need to be in that role anymore. The established hierarchy is utterly terrified of what Caitlyn Clark represents because her undeniable mathematical efficiency ruthlessly and publicly exposes the physical obsolescence of the old guard. We have to have a very brutally honest and uncomfortable conversation right now about the concept of seniority in elite professional sports. Seniority is a toxic and highly inefficient corporate metric specifically designed to protect legacy employees who can no longer justify their massive market value through raw physical production. Chelsea Gray has been a brilliant and highly respected operator in the past, with a resume of championships and accolades that no one can deny. But the modern, hyper-evolved game of basketball, driven by the relentless pace that Caitlyn Clark has forcefully imposed, is completely and utterly unforgiving to players who lose their mobility. The pace of the transaction has simply become way too fast for the legacy hardware to process effectively in real time. Continuing to start players based on their historical achievements, rather than their current objective kinetic reality, is a guaranteed recipe for catastrophic failure in high-stakes environments. The visual contrast on the floor was absolutely blinding to anyone paying attention to the actual flow of the game. When Clark is running the show, the basketball moves like a high-frequency trading algorithm on Wall Street, instantly identifying defensive inefficiencies and violently exploiting them in fractions of a millisecond. When the legacy guards are on the floor, the entire operational system bogs down into slow, predictable, easily defensible isolation sets that generate absolutely zero leverage. The global market has officially moved on, the paradigm has violently shifted, and the establishment needs to desperately accept that the new board of directors has officially taken their seats at the head of the table. And if you mistakenly thought Caitlyn Clark was dangerous only when she was shooting 30-foot logo bombs from the parking lot, you are absolutely blind to the terrifying off-season development she has been executing. While the rest of the league was busy recording podcasts, she has been quietly and aggressively expanding her offensive product line to monopolize every single square inch of the court. She has not just been resting on her massive endorsement deals, she has been adding to her bag in a way that is about to get very spooky for the rest of the WNBA. She has officially added a deadly, highly efficient, and biomechanically perfect mid-range game to her already overflowing offensive portfolio. She is ruthlessly snaking the pick and roll, violently stopping on a dime with terrifying deceleration and executing flawless, unblockable mid-range pull-ups. This is a catastrophic and nightmare-inducing development for every single defensive coordinator currently employed in professional basketball. When a player who already commands absolute panicked defensive attention at 35 feet suddenly proves she can surgically dissect your defense from 15 feet, she becomes mathematically unguardable. She has effectively and permanently eliminated the final desperate defensive strategy that teams use to try and contain her raw output. It is about to get incredibly dark for the rest of the league because this is not just about winning regular season games. This is fundamentally about the upcoming collective bargaining agreement negotiations, where players are fighting for a massive slice of the global television broadcasting revenue. Caitlyn Clark is the undeniable billion-dollar battering ram that is going to violently break down the heavy oak doors of the billionaire owners' boardrooms. When she signs her next professional deal, the entire financial infrastructure of women's sports will permanently alter forever. She is using these high-profile international games as a live-fire, highly public demonstration of her absolute and unhedged market value. She is proving to the multinational conglomerates and the television networks that she is the sole proprietor of the viewership economy. Every single time she pulls up off the dribble, she is actively negotiating her next 9-figure contract in real time. But the utter comprehensive destruction of New Zealand was absolutely not just a one-woman show, even if she was the catalyst. It was a comprehensive, top-to-bottom, terrifying institutional flexing of absolute athletic muscle that sent shockwaves through the global community. Let us talk in extreme detail about the second unit, the bench mob, and the absolute liquidation squad that came into the game and poured gasoline on the fire. When an opposing team is already bleeding out from the high-speed strikes of the starting lineup, the last thing they want to see is Rhyne Howard stepping onto the hardwood. She had absolute, cold-blooded, psychopathic malice in her eyes as she executed the synthetic leather cover off the basketball. Howard was operating as a highly trained sniper with absolutely zero conscience, ruthlessly punishing every microscopic rotational mistake the New Zealand defense made. 6 of 10 from behind the three-point line is 60% efficiency from deep volume, which is not just elite shooting, it is a systematic dismantling of psychological resolve. You cannot teach that level of pure, unadulterated hostility on the basketball court. And operating directly alongside that perimeter artillery, you have the relentless bruising and terrifying physical interior presence of Angel Reese. Reese logged 17 highly productive and violently physical minutes, completely imposing her will on the painted area. She scored 9 points, grabbed 4 crucial rebounds, and secured highly valuable extra offensive possessions that broke down the opposing front court. When you combine that with Monique Billings going a hyper-efficient 5 for 7 from the floor and Kiki Iriafen shooting a staggering 66% from the field, you see the definition of a global corporate monopoly. This is what an unassailable market share looks like in physical athletic form. Team USA did not just casually beat New Zealand, they systematically and mathematically denied them the fundamental right to exist on the same competitive plane. Holding an international professionally funded team to a pathetic 46 total points is a defensive masterpiece built on sheer physical intimidation. It is a psychological torture device specifically designed to make the opposing roster deeply question why they even bothered boarding the flight. It is the sporting equivalent of starving a competitor out of the market entirely by cutting off their supply lines and salting the earth so nothing can ever grow there again. And it all inevitably and undeniably circles back to the primary catalyst and the ultimate, undisputed leverage point of this entire global operation. Forget the internal federation politics, and forget the highly curated egos of the legacy veterans who are watching their cultural relevance vanish into thin air. The passes are going to be there, and this is exactly why they need to start her every single game, without exception. Forget all that seniority stuff, because this is the best point guard in the entire world right now. The continued institutional refusal to openly acknowledge that objective, mathematically proven reality is nothing short of clinical institutional delusion. She is actively leading the team and keeping the entire highly talented roster incredibly happy by delivering pinpoint, perfectly timed transition dimes. When you possess an asset this historically powerful, you absolutely do not put a restrictor plate on the engine just to make the older models feel better about their diminishing status. You take the brakes completely off, you rip the steering wheel out of the hands of the establishment, and you hand her the unrestricted keys to the global franchise. You let her completely and violently obliterate the competition without a single ounce of mercy or hesitation. The New Zealand game was not a basketball match. It was the official and heavily documented warning shot fired across the bow of every basketball federation on Earth. The long-awaited transition of power is no longer a theoretical debate held on sports talk radio. It is a brutal and undeniable kinetic reality. The polite foundational grow the game era of women's professional basketball is completely dead and buried deep beneath the desert sand. We have officially entered the era of the brutal, hostile takeover and the era of hyper-optimized efficiency. This is the era where massive television ratings, multinational corporate sponsorships, and undeniable kinetic production dictate the exact terms of engagement. Caitlyn Clark has effectively and masterfully weaponized her entire game and successfully surrounded herself with elite corporate partners like Paige Bueckers, Ryan Howard, and Angel Reese. She is coming for every single broadcast dollar, every single championship trophy, and every single ounce of institutional leverage available in the global market. The 101-46 annihilation was absolutely not a statistical anomaly. It was the establishment of the terrifying new baseline. It was the absolute minimum standard of execution for a national team that has finally realized its true potential under the visionary leadership of a generational disruptor. The old guard of the sport has exactly two choices left in front of them right now. They can either politely step aside, collect their legacy pensions, and watch the revolution unfold from the safety of the luxury suites, or they can stubbornly step onto the court and get completely run over by the unstoppable bullet train of progress. There is absolutely no middle ground remaining, and there is no room for polite compromise or participation trophies anymore. There is only the ruthless, beautiful, and deeply unforgiving reality of elite, high-stakes sports economics. And right now, at this exact moment in history, Caitlyn Clark is the absolute undisputed majority owner of the entire global board. The upcoming professional season is rapidly loading, and the most valuable player campaign has already officially and aggressively begun. The absolute, unmitigated carnage we are about to witness over the next decade will be meticulously studied in Ivy League business schools for the next 50 years. It will be known as the ultimate flawless blueprint for a hostile market takeover in the world of professional sports. Welcome to the terrifying new world order of professional basketball, and welcome to the uncompromising era of absolute leverage. Do not dare blink and do not look away for a single second, because the hostile takeover is just getting started. The weak will be permanently liquidated and left completely behind in the dust as this new administration takes full control of the future. If they continue to play Caitlyn as the point and let her run the entire offense, the United States will slaughter everyone in their path. You can see what happens when you finally have Caitlyn Clark starting, as she makes the team gel together like poetry in motion. Some might say she is not just the greatest of all time, but a leader who ensures the team is phenomenal, alongside other unstoppable players like Paige Bueckers. Even when someone like Angel Reese manages to put personal grievances aside, she proves she is a good ball player when she leaves her feelings at the door. Team USA is amazing, and it is clear that Caitlyn is not trying to outshine those who came before her, as she learned from watching them growing up. It is only fair that she gets her shot at being all she can be without being labeled or abused for her gifts. The coaching staff is still displaying biased treatment by not making her the starter from day one, and some feel they should even be fired for this hesitation. Caitlyn Clark is the best point guard in the world, and leading the team in points and assists during this tournament should make her the clear, most valuable player. Despite the negativity from some about the coaching or the repetitive nature of sports commentary, the reality on the court speaks louder than any word salad. She is enjoying herself and playing in the moment, proving that all the talk about contracts is secondary to her love for the game. Caitlyn Clark is an absolutely phenomenal, generational, and living icon both on and off the court. If the coaches continue to let Caitlyn cook, the world will have no choice but to watch in awe as she redefines the limits of the sport. The era of absolute leverage has arrived, and the transition of power is complete. The absolute, unmitigated carnage we are about to witness over the next decade will be meticulously studied in Ivy League business schools for the next 50 years. It will be known as the ultimate flawless blueprint for a hostile market takeover in the world of professional sports. Welcome to the terrifying new world order of professional basketball, and welcome to the uncompromising era of absolute leverage. Do not dare blink and do not look away for a single second, because the hostile takeover is just getting started. The weak will be permanently liquidated and left completely behind in the dust as this new administration takes full control of the future. If they continue to play Caitlyn as the point and let her run the entire offense, the United States will slaughter everyone in their path. You can see what happens when you finally have Caitlyn Clark starting as she makes the team gel together like poetry in motion. Some might say she is not just the greatest of all time, but a leader who ensures the team is phenomenal, alongside other unstoppable players like Paige Bueckers. Even when someone like Angel Reese manages to put personal grievances aside, she proves she is a good ball player when she leaves her feelings at the door. Team USA is amazing, and it is clear that Caitlyn is not trying to outshine those who came before her as she learned from watching them growing up. It is only fair that she gets her shot at being all she can be without being labeled or abused for her gifts. The coaching staff is still displaying biased treatment by not making her the starter from day one, and some feel they should even be fired for this hesitation. Caitlyn Clark is the best point guard in the world, and leading the team in points and assists during this tournament should make her the clear, most valuable player. Despite the negativity from some about the coaching or the repetitive nature of sports commentary, the reality on the court speaks louder than any word salad. She is enjoying herself and playing in the moment, proving that all the talk about contracts is secondary to her love for the game. Caitlyn Clark is an absolutely phenomenal, generational, and living icon both on and off the court. If the coaches continue to let Caitlyn cook, the world will have no choice but to watch in awe as she redefines the limits of the sport. The era of absolute leverage has arrived, and the transition of power is complete.